Do you know Len Brecken? He wrote the book The Shadow Conspiracy, 9/11, and State Terrorism. His conclusion was that it was a Saudi, Israeli, U.S. Joint operation. So,
Yep, I would agree with that.
I mean, it looks like it was a U.S. maybe planned and.
Well, I would credit the Zionists with a little more of it. I think that people kind of committed to Zionism have
Mhm.
wormed their way into influential positions in all of these Western intelligence agencies and apparatuses. I would imagine that people like Bernard Lewis, who is the dean of British Orientalism and the chief formulator of Western Middle East policy, as far as the responsibility for 9/11, I think it's pretty clear that it was, in a sense, a sort of a U.S., Israeli, Saudi operation. And personally, I would credit the Israelis and their helpers around the world with the prime impetus here. People like Bernard Lewis, who is an ardent Zionist and is the dean of Western Oriental Studies, as well as an advisor to the British and U.S. governments on Middle East policy, would seem to me to be a prime suspect. I think that the concept of 9/11 was probably worked out many decades in advance by people like Lewis, whose doctoral dissertation was on the Ismaili Assassins, which was a radical sect that destabilized the Islamic world and allowed the Crusaders to succeed in moving into it during the Middle Ages.
Can I interrupt you for a second regarding the roots going way back? Do you think this goes back to Operation Northwoods?
Yeah, I think Northwoods style techniques were employed in 9/11. Northwoods was a plan to set off all kinds of bombs in American cities, sink American ships, blame all of these deaths on Castro, and launch a war against Cuba. And that follows with this kind of time-honored path of these false flag war trigger operations, which in one sense or another have launched every major U.S. war since the Mexican War. And it's not just the U.S. that does it. Other countries have done it as well, going all the way back to Nero, burning Rome and blaming the Christians. But as far as the more, specifics of 9/11, which was a very, very large event that totally changed history, changed the form of government in the U.S., changed the direction of future foreign policy, I think that that was a product of neoconservative thought. And two key figures would be the Bernard Lewis side, which is the Orientalists who argued that radical destabilizing Muslim groups like Al-Qaeda should be created in order to continue the Zionist and Western penetration of the Islamic world and hinder the Islamic awakening. This is a barely veiled argument that Lewis makes in, among other places, an essay that was published in Netanyahu's volume, Terrorism, How the West Can Win. The double meaning of that title is quite illuminating, suggesting that terrorism is precisely, how the West can win this struggle with the Islamic world. And then Bernard Lewis picks that up and runs with it and puts forward this argument that terrorism is not characteristic of Islamic societies, and the subtext being that the West needs to create artificial extremist terrorist groups modeled after the medieval Ismaili assassins in order to destabilize the Islamic world and keep it open to penetration by imperialism, and especially Zionism, which is, of course, the main concern of people like Bernard Lewis. The neoconservatives were the other wing of this, would be the people associated with Leo Strauss, who founded neoconservatism. Leo Strauss was also an ardent Zionist, and his students at the University of Chicago spent the 1960s sitting around with him in after-hours bull sessions. And these were handpicked, almost all Jewish, almost all extremely bright students that he made his acolytes, and ostensibly had sexual relations with some of them, too. He was quite a dubious character. These guys would hang around after hours at the University of Chicago plotting a coup d'etat in America. That is, how could the Zionists take over in a representative democracy in a coup d'etat? This turned into a book by a leading neoconservative military strategist called Coup d'etat, a practical handbook. The author's name is escaping me briefly. It'll come back to me in a moment. So anyway, since the 60s, the neocons had been plotting a 9/11-style coup d'etat in the U.S. designed to turn the U.S. in a much more hardline and much more permanent pro-Zionist, hardline imperialist direction in future Mideast policy. And so this was all set out. So that's why I think that when we say that it's a U.S., Israeli, Saudi operation, it's really being done primarily by people whose first loyalty is to Israel, and they're doing it in order to create a 100 years war by the West against the Islamic world and to keep the Islamic world destabilized and in chaos. That's not really in the national interest of the U.S. or even Saudi Arabia. And I think the U.S. and Saudi Arabia have been pawns of these Zionist forces, which are very strong in Western politics and finance.
I just thought I'd mention, I was doing research for an article I wrote not long ago on 9/11, and I went to the Project for a New American Centuries website here from Moscow, and within 6 hours the site went offline. I mean, it's been online since 97, so I don't know if they're trying to cover their tracks or what's going on there.
Well, PNAC shut down after they were exposed. I think they shut down in sort of around 2005 or 6 officially. They might have had their website still.
Right. Yeah, they had a skeleton crew keeping the site up, but...
Yeah, well, they shut down because they were exposed by David Ray Griffin's book, A New Pearl Harbor, which really popularized that phrase and pointed straight at PNAC as the likely perpetrators of 9/11. And it's interesting that PNAC was actually, when they put out that Rebuilding America's Defenses document calling for a new Pearl Harbor in order to get regime change across the Middle East and to militarize America, they were actually just rewriting a document that many of the same guys had already written for Benjamin Netanyahu in the mid-1990s. And that was called the Clean Break document. And it argued for really the same things, only it was much more straightforward in pointing out that this was all being done in Israel's interest. Mm-hmm. So they repackaged it ostensibly for the American viewpoint in this Rebuilding America's Defenses document. But again, all of these guys are Jewish, hardline, extreme Zionists whose first loyalty is to Israel.
I see. Originally, I had wanted to speak with you about other issues, but this is something that's not going to go away until the people that are responsible are forced to take responsibility for their actions. But regarding everything that's going on right now, and there's a lot going on in the Muslim world, in the Middle East, and in particular Iran, if we could, Libya, Syria, what do you think now? Iran's nuclear threat, which I would say was never a threat to begin with, is now gone. NATO says now there's 30 other countries that pose a threat, so they have to continue surrounding Russia with their missile batteries. About Iran, if we could.
I think there's a struggle going on in the U.S. policymaking apparatus between the sort of hardline neocon Zionist faction that did 9/11 and a more realist faction led by people like Brzezinski. And those people actually are much more concerned with going after Russia and China.
Sorry, sir, you're saying that Brzezinski, he's the more realist faction?
Yeah. Brzezinski is the relative moderate, which tells you just how crazy American foreign policy is.
Oh, my God.
Brzezinski used to be the ultimate extremist, lunatic hawk who was out there, arguing to create and fund Al-Qaeda and, radically anti-Russian and everything. He's from Polish nobility and he never really liked Russia very much.
Oh, sure.
So he used to be considered the extreme radical hardliner. Now, he has mellowed a bit, but I think the problem is that these even more insane people have risen to the highest levels of power. And so now he looks relatively moderate by comparison.
Wow. God.
Across the board in American politics, where Nixon was proposing a national minimum income of what would now be $25,000 a year. Nixon would be a radical leftist, civil libertarian communist by today's standards. It just tells you how terrible things have gotten. But anyway, these realists, I think, notice that the Zionist strategy of demonizing Islam and putting all of America's energy into fighting pointless wars in the Middle East to destroy the enemies of Israel, which is what the whole Middle Eastern policy has been since 9/11, is really fruitless from a larger sort of, Western U.S. geopolitical perspective. And people like Brzezinski, who are kind of hawkish regarding the grand chessboard and, trying to rule the world from North America means that you have to grab the middle of Eurasia, where the majority of the world's population and productivity is. The guys like that are noticing that this neocon policy of demonizing Islam and smashing up the Middle East for no good reason is completely insane. So that's the conflict, I think, in the American policymaking circles. And gradually the sort of relatively realist faction has been taking their power back since the 9/11 coup d'etat by the Zionist faction. Mm-hmm. And the problem is, though, that these realists, it's not like they're, moral or really offended by things like 9/11 or, really interested in peace and stability. It's more, I think, that they are actually going to use the extra state power, the extra military money, the surveillance capabilities that 9/11 generated, and turn those maybe away from Israel's enemies in the Middle East, where they've all been focused until now, and fight this rearguard action to maintain, U.S. Western empire in the face of the rising power of the BRIC axis and these other sort of non-Western countries, the collapse of the U.S. dollar, which has been the underpinning of the whole global system. So they're kind of desperately trying to prop up this crumbling imperial power. And I think they noticed that this Middle Eastern stuff is not getting them very far. It's maybe helping Israel by smashing every independent country in the Middle East that has enough independence to oppose Israel, but it's not doing the larger Western geopolitical interests any good. So they're now sort of doing this pivot to Asia, where they're concerned about the rise of China and all of that, trying to manage that. And then they still have this insane policy of being so bellicose with Russia, which doesn't really make much sense. You'd think that geopolitically they would be better off dealing more diplomatically with Russia, but no, they have to surround Russia with nuclear weapons and try to achieve a first strike capacity and thereby keep risking World War III. I don't really know what's wrong with these people, but if you could tell me, I'd be grateful.
I don't know either. Some people I know say they're not even human, so that's why nobody can understand them.
I've had radio guests who make that argument in all seriousness. David Jacobs is a professor in Pennsylvania who was always considered the leading American scholarly expert on the UFO phenomena from a sort of folkloristic perspective. All the respectable academicians turned to his work to look at that phenomenon, and I studied him as part of my folklore minor for a PhD. But at the time I was studying him, I hadn't realized that just a few years before that, he'd come out with this new book called The Threat, which argues basically that there's this evil alien invasion of Earth going on and that they're kidnapping people and creating hybrids that will inherit the Earth after some kind of massive destructive episode. Mm-hmm. And, of course, this sounds completely paranoid and insane, especially when you get into the details of, these aliens can float people through solid walls and they can, erase people's memories and all this stuff. It sounds just like the most outlandish paranoid hallucination. But, Jacobs is a very well-spoken, careful guy who never said anything like this until the mid-'90s when he finally came out and said, I think I figured out what's going on. More and more people are saying that there is some kind of ET aspect to things, that precisely what that is still fairly unclear. But I do think that sensible people around the world should be supporting the disclosure movement, which is pushing for a complete declassification of all UFO-related information in all countries of the world, and starting with the U.S., where it seems like there's the biggest and most nefarious cover-up. I think that's a serious issue, and maybe we'll find that there's really nothing there once we declassify all of it. But my guess is that there actually is something there, and that it would explain a fair bit of what's going on.
I see. I've come to the conclusion that all the UFO sightings and all that stuff, because it goes on in the United States, it's all tied up with CIA kidnappings and sex slavery and children being sold and testing of secret aircraft and all that. But I think it's foolish, and I've always thought it's incredibly arrogant and imbecilic to believe that we, if you want to call us as a human race intelligent, that we're the only intelligence in the universe. If that's the case, it's a very sad fact. But if you followed Scientology, it would make sense, wouldn't it? Some alien, cold, and calculating force that can just come in and take over human bodies. But
well, it's funny. These people I deal with at Veterans Today, which is a haven for folks from the U.S. military and intelligence services who have kind of gotten fed up with the nonsense. It's full of people who really believe this stuff, who claim that they have had classified briefings and stuff that supports this. I actually was on the phone with a fellow named Leo Wanta, who claims to have single-handedly brought down the Soviet Union by some kind of currency scam. The story goes that he discovered a loophole in the way that the Soviet currency was traded, and so he was able to engineer this massive vacuum cleaner operation, suck all the value out of the ruble, and supposedly piled up in excess of $10 trillion, which then got embezzled by the Bush crime family. So that's the story he tells.
That was the end of part 1 of an interview with Dr. Kevin Barrett, a doctor in Arabic and Islamic studies, and the owner and manager of truthjihad.com.